Okay, we are live and good morning, everyone. It's the Senate Transportation Committee and it's Friday. And we have a couple of items this morning, and next week, I understand we're going to get into the T-bill. And I think the House is finished with it, so we will start our overview of the transportation bill. But this morning, we're going to talk about the Waterbury Main Street construction project, which seemed to me a very exciting project. I've seen pictures of it, but it was a major project, and they tore up all kinds of utilities, and I have not seen it since it's been completed, or probably it hasn't been completed, but with that, we'll have an update. And who's with us this morning to give us that update? Ken, Ron with us? Who is going to give us the some overview this morning?
Senator Mazza, this is Ken Upma with the Vermont Agency of Transportation, and I was acting project manager on this project. And also with me today is of my staff is Casey Leach, who's one of my senior engineers, and he actually participated in the construction of this project. So I was thinking that I would give you folks a brief overview of the project.
Great.
And then Casey would follow.
Ken, this has nothing to do with the project, but is Audrey are you related to Audrey Upmall?
Audrey, that was my mother.
Okay. I was thinking that might be. I worked with her a long time ago, so I was thinking that perhaps it's not a common name.
No, it's not. That my mom's been gone for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So why don't I just start? I didn't do anything really too formal here. I don't have a PowerPoint. I got a few illustrations I'd like to show you folks. And like I said, I'll do an introduction and kind of talk about the project as a whole. And then Casey Leach has sent some construction photographs, and he can walk you guys through a few of the various construction aspects of the project, okay? So Waterbury Main Street, this was what we call at the agency an FEGC project. What that stands for is Federal Economic Growth Center. And so the project really wasn't about safety or mobility. It's about economic growth and vitality for not only for the municipality, but for the region. So really, that's where this project comes from. So it's a Federal Economic Growth Center. This project's been under development for years. It's what we call at the agency one of our legacy projects. I manage a number of legacy projects. I've been fortunate enough to deliver a bunch of them, and I have a few more before I step off. I worked on the Berry City project, which is similar to this, and US Route 7 in Charlotte was a legacy project. Pittsford-Brandon corridor, those are legacy projects, and Cabot-Danville. So these are large, linear, full depth reconstruction projects, and that's what it represents. This project took an incredible amount of effort from an engineering standpoint to get it to construction. It actually had a construction cost of $26 million, had a right-of-way cost of about $1.5 million, and spent almost $3.5 million in preliminary engineering on the project, for a total of about $31.2 million. So I think it's fair to say that it's probably the most expensive mile of highway in the state of Vermont.
And it's all in Center Perchlik's district.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There seems to be a lot in his district. He's got enough for the next 10 years. He shouldn't have anything. So
yeah, but you've got that special bridge.
Well, let's not go there, okay?
I was just going to mention that. It's very fancy.
Okay.
I think we're talking about Grand Isle here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jane. I appreciate that.
It's okay. And they all, it's like Alice in Wonderland. They all shall be winners and all shall have prizes, right?
Oh, my buddy Jane. Okay, go right ahead.
Doing my
So,
best, Senator Mazza, to add a little levity to our otherwise
Is
weighty.
the project done in Waterbury, or is it, I haven't been over there.
It's practically done. All the base pavements laid. We've got some minor cleanup this year, and of course, for a project like this, you like the sub base and base pavement to settle. So we'll be completing the job by July 1st with final paving, line striping, street lights,
Wow.
etc.
What a project.
Liz, could you please pull up that perspective of the, or actually, would you pull up the linear map of the project, please? Liz, can you hear me? Yep.
You see it? Is that it?
Well, that's okay. We'll do this one first.
Oh, wait, I got it. Hold on.
No,
Want
this
this one?
is fine. No, Liz, the map that I sent you, it was called, I had sent you two.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll find
two
it. Let's do this
illustrations,
one.
yes.
Yep, okay.
But if you want, Liz, we can leave this map here for a second. I'll just briefly go
Yeah,
through this.
It's gonna take a minute. I thought, yep, okay, thanks.
Okay. So this right here is a perspective of the, well, that's okay.
What's the issue now? Do you see it?
Well, no,
No.
Oh,
we're just
geez,
your inbox.
sorry. Yeah, I hate that. Share, can you not share your screen, Ken, and show it yourself?
Liz, can you just leave that there for a second? That map you got right
Yes.
there?
Yep.
And she can't look for the other thing if she's sharing screen.
And I got that too, but this is a perspective of the project. Just, I like the picture because it shows really what the stamp pavement is and the bulb outs and the crosswalks. So you see what you got here is a downtown cross section of the highway. So you've got, but you'll notice it's got new sewer and new water, and it shows your sub basin, your under drain, and your new pavement. Shows your sidewalks, your street lights, your bulb outs with the stamp pavement. So there's just a general perspective of a cross section of the highway. There we go. So now, Liz, there was that other picture I had. Let me just
It's gonna take a moment, unless you can share it yourself, but I will look for it.
yeah,
It's
it was
just gonna take a
called
minute.
Waterbury Map General.
Yep, it's gonna take a minute for me to find it, so can
Okay.
you, do you not have it? Can you share it?
I have it. Let me see. How do I share my screen here?
Just click share screen, and I'll look for it in the meantime.
Okay, share screen. Yeah.
Just click share screen.
Yeah. Now I gotta
Apologies.
find them. I gotta find the.
Yeah, I'll look too.
Oh.
How'd you ever manage a project like that with all the traffic going through town? I mean, I just can't imagine tearing up the whole street. Wow.
There we go. Okay, so on the far left there of that illustration, you can see the circle. That's the roundabout off the interchange.
Oh, yeah. No.
Okay, and the project starts just beyond the brook, that little bridge on the right side, right there, and it extends. It actually extends easterly, and right there you'll see it goes all the way down to a point. Just past the old Bean Chevrolet place. You can see the Waterbury State Office complex loop there as such. Now, got a few things. This one of the challenges of this project, of course, the real challenge to these projects, I've always said, is not the engineering. Engineers, we don't have a hard time doing our work with respect to the engineering, but it's always the right of way and the utility and the environmental permits. I find those to be our greatest challenges. And just for this project, as a side note, it had 122 separate parcels.
Oh, my God.
So it was the largest right-of-way undertaking that I've ever experienced at the agency. And so, we had to meet with every one of those abutters and discuss the project with them, listen to their needs and concerns, and incorporate that. And then we had to value all those, and then we had to negotiate settlements with all those. And we did a pretty good job there because we only had one individual challenge us minor alterations. The utilities were a really big part of this project. It didn't really show the utility vaulting in that perspective, but because the town had a town ordinance prior to the project's programming, it was eligible for federal participation to underground all the utilities and remove them. And so from the beginning of the project, or just by the ball field, the rec field, all the way to the north access to the loop of the Waterbury State Office Complex, basically just a little more than half the project, all those utilities were put underground. That was an incredible challenge for us. And then we maintained the poles from there to the end of the project. So,
So Ken, does that mean that all the utility poles in Main Street Waterbury are gone?
okay, so there's the trick. Excuse me.
Because I know that, I'll go back to the Danville project. It was incredibly expensive. They ended up just doing it for a segment of town. We've got huge boxes that, our poor little library, I think, hosts about 4 of them. And so the desire to put utilities underground was there, but it turned out it's so expensive. It's just a little chunk in the center of town. So I was wondering what you were doing here.
Well, as I said, we have undergrounded all the utilities. Well, we've built the infrastructure underground for all the utilities from the beginning of the project to that northern access to the state office complex. And it was eligible for federal participation, so the town only pays 2% of that. But here was the trick, and this was one of our greatest challenges. From a constructability standpoint, you could have put all the infrastructure underground, but then it takes about 1.5 years or even more for all the utilities to run their stuff underground. I mean, we don't physically move their infrastructure from the poles to the underground utility conduits and vaults. That's their work. And of course, you'd have them tripping over the contractor, which would be a real mess. And it was a real challenge. So what we came up with after about 1.5 years of discussions was that the existing poles were in a position such that we could leave them throughout the primary reconstruction of the roadway and the sidewalks. And then we build all the underground infrastructure to host those utilities. Excuse me. And now that the vaults are in, I think Green Mountain Power has moved most of their power underground, but now we have 4 or 5 other telecommunications utilities that need to move their work, and most importantly, Fairpoint, who would be the last people to move their stuff underground and then connect it and energize it all. So that's being done now as we speak. And when we get all done, or when this project is scheduled to be built and completed by July 1st. But you're going to see utility poles out there that are in that area where they're supposed to be removed. And we will wait for the utilities to transfer their aerial stuff to underground, and then they'll cut the poles, and then we're going to come back next year and do a second contract where we just patch the sidewalk where the poles were and clean up. So it was a real innovative approach to doing this project, because I don't know how we could have done it in a linear fashion with the utilities tripping over the contractor. So that was probably our greatest challenge throughout the design and development of the project.
Ken, what drives a project like this, Ken? I mean, who determines that you're going to do a mile of road in the middle of Waterbury? I mean, does this start at the community level, or does the state come in? And so what gets this project started?
So projects back in this time are all really developed or initiated through the regional planning groups. You know, the regional planners are who institute the program of projects like these, or at least they did back then. This project was probably promoted in the very early phases of my career, and I've been with the state for 28 years. And then it gets programmed and it gets deemed eligible. And you know, that's what we've got. We've got these legacy projects that have been around in the roadway group, and we've knocked out a whole bunch of them. I'm looking up at my list right now. I've got 4 more or 5 more to complete. I'm not going to get them done in my career because I'm going to retire soon, but when they're done, you know, the agency doesn't have a whole basket more of these to do. I mean, there'll probably be some corridor programming. You know, I know there's interest in certain corridors on the national highway system, but you know, this was all done back in the 80s when they programmed this stuff, and they take a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of time. You know, they're not something that you can knock out like we do in our accelerated bridge program. It's the logistics to advancing a project with the utilities right away and environmental permitting is quite a massive undertaking.
Kind of wonder where sometimes we get the payback on some of these projects. It's not that the infrastructure doesn't need to have upgrades, and you know, we need to modernize and all of that stuff. But when you hear about when you go around the state and you hear about how retail is dead and everybody wants to still move out and all of that, I just wonder if we keep up with the times on some of these. So you know, what was good in the 80s sometimes probably isn't good in the you know, the late 2000s or early 2000s, but you know, it's a beautiful project. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just a stunning project. So I guess probably that's what it is. It keeps Vermont looking more like Vermont. But I hope that people can appreciate, and businesses can appreciate, and people can support a project like this by moving back into the downtown and wanting to be part of that. I hope that eventually that we see that.
You know, I might add to that that, you know, this is a wonderful thing for the town of Waterbury because they replaced all their 100-year-old sewer. It's all new sewer, all new water. All that infrastructure's been replaced, all that utility work, you know, so it's an incredible investment, but you know, it's an incredible product. But you know, this is one of the remaining legacy projects that I've been fortunate enough to work on in advance.
Yep.
Similar to Berry City.
Senator Perchlik?
Yeah, Ken, on the wastewater reconstruction, so was that all eligible for the federal funds because it was under the state right away?
No. What happens with the sewer? I work with Federal Highway Administration, and typically because of the proximity of the existing infrastructure to the bottom of excavation, if it's close enough to that, your construction activities will damage it. So that makes it eligible for participation. And I worked with Federal Highway and got Federal Highway to go along to, I think we had 65% of it that was close enough to it. And instead of making the town pay for the other 35%, Federal Highway came in and decided to participate in the whole thing. So,
because that's an issue with a project in Plainfield on the intersection there. Fortunately, it might create another stoplight for Senator Kitchell to go through on her way to Montpelier, but the cost of the sewer lines and water lines to the town is pretty astronomical. But it seems like some of these projects, they get federal and some of them then they don't. So I'm trying to better understand when that
Yeah,
is.
I'd have to know more of the details. All projects are different.
Right.
So I'm gonna kind of try to wrap this up because I think Casey wants to show you some pictures, but I'll just add a few more things. You know, we coordinated our stormwater with the development of the state Waterbury office complex and ran part of our stormwater water out to them around that north arrow and built a horseshoe receiving channel, and they actually built that for us. So that was kind of neat. The construction phasing was interesting. The contractor, Jay McDonald, came through and used a different approach than we anticipated. And that just shows how contractors use their own innovative means and measures and perhaps do things a little different, but that worked out really good. I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but that was really good. And of course, I'm not sure everybody's aware of, but one of our greatest challenges, we would have built this project a year earlier. We were ready to advertise and we had to deal with all the development soil issues from the new laws that were made related to those. And development soils being those soils in urban municipal environments that have the potential for, solid waste, whatever. So we actually, the soils were the towns, and it would have cost them probably millions of dollars to dispose of that soil under those new guidelines and requirements. And so we came up with another innovative approach, and we kind of bypassed the need to go through that whole process by wasting those soils within the interstate right-of-way. And if you drive around Waterbury, you drive between Burlington and Montpelier, Casey's going to show you some photographs. We disposed, or we placed those materials in two separate or three separate areas within the interstate right-of-way to accommodate those soils. And the town of Waterbury didn't have $3 or $4 million to get rid of that soil, but we were allowed to put it within our right-of-way because it's not going to be developed. So that was really interesting. Like I said, this has been a really incredible undertaking. I'm going to let Casey show you some photos, but just before I close out here on what I wanted to say, I got to give credit to people that really never get much credit. And I really got to give credit to, there's a gentleman who works for the Agency of Transportation. His name is Tom Mancini, and he's the resident engineer on this job. And this guy goes out there and builds a project like this day in, day out, 14-hour days. It's incredible the commitment they have. Casey Leach, who's going to speak to you, went out there and acted as the assistant resident and worked out there for 2 years, hundreds and hundreds of hours. And I got to really give credit to Jay McDonald and their superintendent, Matt Moran, to go out there and deal with the logistics of getting this project constructed is amazing. So I just wanted to give a little credit to those folks in this forum, because those folks never get much credit and they do a really outstanding job. So with that, Casey, why don't you introduce yourself and give the folks a little construction update.
Hi, Senators. Thank you for having us here. So like Kenny said, I was lucky enough to work in the field for the past 2 construction seasons on this project. I did work a little bit with him and Stantec developing the final phase of the contract plans and going through the advertisement process. So luckily I was familiar with it beforehand. And I just have a few photos here that show kind of interesting measures we took to help alleviate the issues that kind of arise with these big construction projects that are located right next to residences and businesses and a massive corridor where thousands of people are driving through every day. So this one just kind of shows the phasing that we use during the paving operations, and the kind of, this is an all hands on deck operation. So basically, right before we pave, we do fine grading where we bring the sub base to the correct level and make sure it has the correct slopes with it. The super elevations are correct and everything.
I wondered, is that bump sign, is that one that the MUTCD would like?
That is not. I believe that one, the message is on the other side. Hopefully they weren't using it for the bump aspect of that, but no, it would probably not be MUTCD compliant. Good eye there. And as Kenny mentioned before, this kind of shows the utility poles. The older ones are still there, as well as the newer ones. So in this area, these poles are staying. So the kind of lighter brown are the newer ones where most of the utilities had already switched over to. And then the darker kind of gray ones we removed when we did the reconstruction of the sidewalk through this area. Kenny also mentioned the dry utilities, so the electric and communication. We had
Look at the pipe.
EMP,
Oh, huh.
we had the electric company and then 4 different communication companies that that we had to run either the communication pedestals, which would be what these are doing. Each color is a different communication company. And then these larger boxes are what the electric transformers sit on. And I believe Senator Kitchell mentioned earlier those kind of that are throughout Danville already. So Waterbury will have something similar. Most of these we were able to kind of push off to the side a little bit more. And once the landscaping is in there, most of them will be somewhat concealed. And they are kind of a duller green. So hopefully they kind of blend in as well.
Boy, talk about coordinating things. Oh my God, I can't even imagine sitting down and figure this all out.
Yeah, the conduit was probably one of the trickier things to sit and go down through, especially in the areas with light pole based foundations or busy intersections where there's just a bunch of stuff going on. We had to do quite a few field changes just to make everything work. But luckily, like Kenny said, McDonald was really good and they were on top of it. And
You get it all filled up and buried up and you forgot to put one in.
hopefully not, knock on wood.
Oh my God.
Luckily, part of it is they run the strings through them, the pole strings for the actual utilities before they progress too far. So not that it didn't happen, but luckily we caught any errors before they were in concrete.
Wow.
These are just some more kind of riser poles for the conduit. So this is right where the conduit would start coming up. So you can see these metal sleeves here. So these would all bend here and then come up the pole. And then they would start heading down toward Waitsfield. And you can see some of the issues we had with driveways, because of course we have to maintain access to driveways that only have one entry or exit point. So between digging the conduit trench, laying the conduit, and then these are all concrete encased. So you have to encase them in concrete and then let the concrete set before you can backfill. So that takes
were all the businesses shut down during that time? The business on Main Street, or they were able to stay open?
They were able to stay open mostly.
Wow.
So if they were open, then we made accommodations either with ramps or temporary walkways to make sure that pedestrians could get in.
Wow.
Some of them that only have limited access, they might have changed their hours a little bit. And as terrible as COVID was or is, a lot of businesses were either reduced because the state office complex wasn't really at capacity. So there was a lot of kind of downtime with the businesses.
Yeah, right.
But here you can see we have metal plates with temporary driveways to maintain access to all these residences and businesses. People with large driveways or turnarounds like this garage here or the fire department was a great example, because we can't obviously dig a large trench across the entirety of the fire department. You just kind of have to do that in phases. So you have to phase everything out. This was primarily what the contractor submitted for their traffic control plan. We had a lot of stipulations in our contract plans about when they could do lane closures, for how long. One of the stipulations we had was they could only do kind of one lane closures from like 9 to 3 because we really didn't want to jam up school buses or the state office complex, which is a huge generator of traffic. So during those really busy areas before 9 and after 3, we wanted 2 lanes open at all times, so they had more freeing movement there. But you can see the top one, this was primarily our sewer, which was on the right-hand side of the road, and the bottom one was mostly the sewer on the left, or sorry, the water on the left. And then you can see we maintain two-way traffic, and then they could just move the barrels because we typically use barrels or movable barricades during the daytime hours. And then if we had to, we would put concrete barriers up at night. But the goal was to have everything backfilled by the evening, primarily by 3 p.m. So we could have the two-way traffic moving freely without having concrete barricades throughout the entirety of the project. These just kind of show some innovative traffic control. When we got down toward, luckily the work by the roundabout was the second year. So we were able to really get a rhythm going and get our feet wet and know what we were doing. And that's one of the reasons McDonald planned their traffic control that way, or their work sequencing that way. They didn't want to start in what they called phase 1 or 2, which is primarily the downtown corridor because it would be so busy. With the roundabout, we did require a separate traffic control plan. They had flaggers on every leg to kind of prevent gridlock from happening. And the picture on the left is just a water line install. This is the new water main that's going in. You can see traffic moving on an alternating one-way basis. So this van is actually part of the live lane of traffic. And then the dump trucks would park next to the trench to take all the backfill and to bring backfill back when they were filling the trench. And then of course the equipment is above the water line. And the one on the right is a live tap. When we got to the live water main that we were tying into on both ends of the project and some of the intersections, they used live taps, so we didn't have to shut down large portions of the water system for an entire day. These really show the proximity of what we were doing to these businesses. As you can see, this is a really deep sewer install, and we were right at the entrance of VSECU, Northfield Savings Bank, and ProPig is just right on this side as well. VSECU, I think, did close down temporarily a few days, just because you can see it's very difficult to get people in and out of there safely. And we were lucky enough to have separate entrances down on this left-hand picture. McGillicuddy's had a second door right here, and this walkway goes to a stairway that empties out onto Elm Street, so we were able to maintain traffic and go through there. We also use pedestrian flaggers. This is one of them right here. So their job was to move pedestrians throughout the work zone. They would be in hard hats and safety vests. They had all the safety precautions with them. But they would be looking.
Casey, is the light still there where Stowe Street comes onto Main Street then?
This light?
Yes.
The new lights are in, so there is a new traffic signal there. Yes.
Oh, okay, but there's still that's still a lighted. It's still a signalized intersection.
Yep, it's still a signalized intersection. They don't have the span wires anymore. It's their actual mast poles, so they look a lot better, I think. But yes, this one is still a signalized intersection, and then down at the next intersection as well, not Elm Street, not Randall Street either. By the state office complex, that one is still signalized as well. That's a 4-way signalized intersection.
I should tell the committee I worked at the state complex from 1978 to 2002. So I spent a lot of time in downtown Waterbury, and I can tell you
Must have been 12 years old then. Wow.
I must have been, but let me tell you, the village of Waterbury is compared to one late 70s. And it's just a beautiful village, and the houses are in much better condition, and the commercial district. So it's been an interesting evolution to see, but that's a lot of time. And that was back when the complex was not what it is today. So it's pretty transformative.
We did do a lot of work very close to buildings. As you can see here, this is the funeral home that's right on Foundry Street. We're doing a water investigation right at McGillicuddy's. We had a leak somewhere, so they were receiving water in their basement. So we were trying to figure out if it was an old corporation stop. Because typically what the town would do when they had switched services, they would either just crimp the copper. They wouldn't necessarily shut off the corporation because then you'd have to dig to the main. There was a lot of interesting live water services that were unknown when we were digging, which made it interesting. But they actually had customers here who were eating out there, and they were very fascinated with the work that we were doing. And then these are just some of the ramps that we kept to have people gain access to their driveways. Obviously, it was just a walk on. They had to park either at their neighbors or over at the town office complex. And we worked with the town really closely. We had meetings with them every week with our public information officer, with the town public works director. So we were they worked very well to get the word out, to let people know when we would be impacting their driveways or their water service, things like that. And especially for the driveways, it was a great sense of community because they would let their neighbors park over with them, or they worked out systems like that between themselves, which worked really well. And then these are some of the new utility poles that were still kind of in the way. As Kenny said, we couldn't really relocate them, and they are newer. So we just had an item in the contract for bracing them. So that was either with excavators, as you can see on the picture on the left, that was used a lot to make sure that they wouldn't wiggle around too much during the excavation. And then the picture on the right, you can see GMP for the more robust poles that had much more on them would come and hold them themselves, just to make sure that there wouldn't be any issues with them. And then we do have a sand filter that's right outside of the town office. It's buried down into the ground. It goes down about 15, 16 feet. And they had to come up with this bracing system. We had originally thought it would be precast. Obviously, it's way too big to ship a precasted item like that. So they did do cast in place. They came up with this bracing system so they could pound those sheets down to the ground as they're excavating, so they could just keep going deeper and deeper without having it collapse in. You can see some cars up here kind of for scale. And then there's a guy standing down there who's roughly 6 feet tall. So it was very deep down into the ground. And then with all the underground, there's a lot of unknowns. The center picture is a drainage structure that they found it was right across from the town office building, actually. It took them about 45 minutes to dig it out of the ground. We didn't know it was there. And the concrete was actually too hard. They couldn't break it with an excavator. So they had to dig all the way around it and take it out full, which was pretty interesting. We do find a lot of pipes that we're not really sure what they're coming from. We try to figure out what they are, if they're still active, and then we would tie them into drainage structures as needed. And then the photo on the right just kind of shows an active water main. This was right at the end of the project. The town had told us it had been shut off years ago, so we started to remove it, and the valves weren't turned completely. And then it just kind of erupted. And this was actually one of the first days that we were working with the water, which was very interesting because the town didn't exactly know which valves to shut off to make it stop. There was actually an old valve that they had kind of forgotten about that was off all of the latest plans, tucked away behind a building. But luckily they found it and shut the water off. But it made us well aware that we really need to know where valves are and make sure that they're accessible at all times when you're digging so close to live utilities. And that is all that I have.
Where's the sewage disposal plant in Waterbury? Where is it? Way on the other end, or?
There's, I believe it's right by the roundabout.
Oh, that's where it is.
It's not too far from the roundabout. Yeah, there's a couple of pump stations in between too. I know there's a pump station down by the hockey rink, but all the sewer that we were dealing with was gravity, and it was all kind of, it goes down Elm Street and then goes kind of behind the houses toward the roundabout.
Questions this morning? Great project. Wow, really. Some project to do right downtown, and you to get 122 people to work with you, all the homeowners, and that must have been a challenge right there, just to because I'm sure you had to dig up a lot of front yards and you know, convince them that it was the right thing to do.
Man,
Yes, go ahead, Senator Pertlick.
I should know the answer to this, but all the granite curbing we see, like there's some in this project and a lot of projects we see that. Is it a dumb question to ask if it's all coming from Barry, or is it because there was another granite project and I found out that it's cheaper to import it than it is to get it, but I wondered if the curbing is something we're still getting locally.
I don't think that's a dumb question at all, because that's kind of what I had figured before I started working with these projects. I don't want to be wrong with this, but I'm 99% sure it does not come from Barry. I believe that there's a different type that they do, or they don't manufacture that type of curbing, or I think there's kind of a logistics reason why. Not just that it's cheaper, because they're going to go with the cheapest option, obviously. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Barry kind of produces something different than what they need for the curbing.
Right. And could you find out where it does come from? Like, does it come from India or does it come from like Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I can look into that. I want to say it's New Hampshire. I know the curbing company is from New Hampshire that we're using, and I know they did the Waterbury Stowe project as well. I think they do most of the Vermont projects. But yeah, I can look into that for sure.
Thank you.
I haven't seen any sign that says Senator Pertlick project or anything like that. It's so I just yeah.
I was looking for Pertlick.
It kind of looks like that bump sign.
Yeah.
I was looking for Pertlick Lane. I couldn't see
Yeah,
it.
I haven't seen him anywhere in the pictures at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure
it was very disruptive to politicians during the election, because there's usually a lot of sign holding, waving at the roundabout or along Main Street. But it's hard to do with all the trucks and beeping, and
he probably will be there for the ribbon cutting when it's open, I'm sure.
I don't blame him. I think of 31 million reasons why I would be.
Well, that's an interesting project, and I thank you very much. It was, I often wondered about it. I got to go drive through there someday and see what it looks like now.
It is a nice project. It looks really great.
Wow. Any questions this morning before we? Well, I thank you folks for a great job and constructing that, putting all the pieces together. I just can't even imagine with so many issues and businesses and homes to be involved and do a project like that. It's got to be really challenging, and congratulations to everybody that all had a part in it, because it's not easy when you do utilities and sewer and homeowners and lawns and gardens and everything you think about. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the next project this morning is going to be the Rockingham Bridge. Carolyn Bakota is believed with us this morning. Design, build, and construction project. Is Carolyn with us this morning?
I'm here.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. And I have David Peterson with me as well.
Okay, go right ahead. It's all yours. Tell us a little about yourself and what's happening.
Carolyn Coda. I am a senior project manager in the structure section. And David Peterson, you can say something about yourself, Dave.
I am a lead engineer in the structure section also.
Thank you. Great.
So I have a presentation to share. I'm going to try. See how it pans out here. Can you see a picture with a couple bridges?
Wow, I guess so.
Okay, good, great. So we're good to go.
Good to go.
So Thank you for having us. This is the Rockingham IMO 091-1-66 bridges on I-91. This is what those bridges looked originally. You will see a few pictures that will show this truss here, but for the most part, they're gone. So we expect the completion of this project in September of 2021. Quick project summary. This project is a design build project. And so we expect to spend about $55 million, which actually includes the design engineering, the construction costs, and all of our construction engineering costs as well. Construction began March of 2017, and that included putting a crossover to maintain traffic. And in August of 2017, they started demolishing the Northbound Bridge. And the Northbound Bridge was completed and opened to two-way traffic in June of 2019. And the demolition of the Southbound Bridge started immediately after. The Southbound Bridge is nearing completion, and we expect that both the Southbound and the Northbound Bridge will be open to two-way traffic in July of this year. All work, bringing everything back to the way it was somewhat, as far as the ground is concerned, is to be completed in September of this year.
Wow.
All right. Thank
What
you,
a
Carolyn.
You're welcome.
So, as Carolyn mentioned, or I introduced myself, David Peterson. I have been part of the VTrans review team for this project since 2015 during the initial scoping and everything. So I've been involved with it for a while. So, you know, kind of before you build the bridge, you got to take the old one down. So that involves demolition. So the contractor proposes a method for taking it down, and due to the height of this bridge, upwards of 100 feet plus, and the proximity of the two bridges together, also working over a railroad in the river, you can imagine it's a pretty difficult demolition process.
Did you build a new bridge and then tear this one down, or you had to replace it on the same footprints?
They were replaced on the same footprint. So because we had two side-by-side bridges, we were able to shift all the traffic onto one.
Oh, I see.
Tear one down, build the new one right back in place.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to change the road construction on either end. No, okay.
No. It was nice in that way. You know, you have the two independent structures, and you can kind of phase the construction.
Okay.
That way.
Yeah. Wow.
So you can go to the next slide, Carolyn.
I know, I'm trying.
Oh,
okay.
There we go.
So here we see the deck has been removed. You have the deck truss. So this type of structure, it was built during the interstate era. And this type of structure is non-redundant, meaning if there's one failure in like one piece, it can cause a catastrophic failure. So that's partially the reason we want to get these off our system. And then it also makes demolition a little more difficult in that you kind of, I picture like a card pyramid where you got to take the correct cards down first. You don't want to just pull one from the bottom. Otherwise it's all going to come down. So they took the truss off, and then they have these really tall piers that they have to take down. So what they did, they actually used some small demolitions in the bottom of the piers to weaken them, and then they slowly pulled them over. And it was pretty cool seeing that. You see these little explosions go, and then they have an excavator attached to a wire, and they would slowly pull these things down. And then one of the other big issues was lead paint and containment of that. So the contractor had to propose a containment plan, and also, any mitigation they would need to do if there was lead paint that fell down on the ground below. So environmentally, they needed to capture all that lead and dispose of it properly. So that was also another piece to their demolition process.
Sorry.
Zooming.
There we go.
There we go. So once Old Bridge was demolished, they could start on the new bridge. So here you can see they have the piers already built. There's 3 new piers matching similar configuration to the existing one, but they were able to build these piers slightly different locations. Modern construction allowed them to do some larger spans. So these piers are approximately anywhere from 75 to 135 feet tall. So really significant heights here. And also access was an issue. So you can see in the right picture, the contractor had to build a little trestle bridge to cross the river. And then they also used that bridge so they could park cranes on it to do their concrete beam lifting. So that trestle really had to be able to withstand not only the loads from the crane, the large beam, it also was in there through the winter. And there's some decent ice flows coming down there, so it had to be able to withstand that force too. So it was just another part of the process that you don't necessarily consider early on in design, but it's part of the construction process.
Those tall supports, are they poured on site, or are they?
They're cast in place. So
Wow.
they would use this forming system where they would, I think you can't really tell on there, but
Over here,
it's every like 20 feet, they would jump up, pour it, jump up to the next level, pour the next level. So it's probably 5 or 6 pours depending on
I'd
height.
say there's a lot of concrete in there. Wow.
Yeah, I looked at the numbers, and those 3 piers had about 4,500 yards of concrete
Oh my God.
just in those. So
That's
yeah, it was a lot of concrete. And it's nice, the concrete, it's locally sourced, supplied. So that's great
wow.
for the local concrete
Economy.
suppliers.
Senator Maza.
Yes, go right
I
ahead.
asked Senator Ingalls if that looks like a good fishing spot too. But when you build these bridges, do you actually think about how to maybe make the culverts attract more fish so as to make underneath bridges a more attractive fishing spot where they like to collect? Is that a crazy question?
It's not. We have certain projects. We do stream restoration type things where we have to put in certain types of stone, so it provides those cover locations. This is a pretty sandy stream, I would say, so it doesn't have a lot of that here. And there's also a trade-off of how much work do we want to do in the stream, because there is a chance of disturbing habitat. So here we were actually able to move the piers further away from the stream, which opened up that hydraulic opening, which helps us from a flood standpoint and mitigates any future scour concerns with the existing bridge, the new bridge.
Okay.
So here's kind of a ground shot of one of the piers. You can see, this is kind of how the workers every day having to go up. I don't even know how many flights of stairs that is, but it's
Wow.
not something I would want to do every day to get up there.
Day's work, just get up there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
So here, this is kind of, they were able to build the new pier. This is on the Southbound Bridge while keeping the existing pier in place. So it kind of allowed them to work on both construction and demolition at the same time. And you can kind of see here, it's offset. The new one's offset further from the river there also. And
Who was the contractor in this one?
the contractor was Reed and Reed out of Maine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they've done some work in Vermont before, not a whole lot, but they were not.
That's
new.
quite a specialty then. I guess you got to really understand this kind of work, because that's it is so far. Wow.
Yeah, they're a pretty good sized contractor. They've done some even larger bridges in Maine. I think one of the main ones may be crossing from Maine to New Hampshire. There was one they did recently.
Not knowing the process, I just can imagine you get all those piers in there. You're off about 3 inches. What do you do then?
Yeah,
Yeah, there.
that's not, that's not good.
That's not,
No.
wow.
Is one of my, I think one of my constituents, is Troy Schumacher on that job?
Yes, he is.
I was saying that name rings a bell.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was working on the V-Trans inspection side, so he was heavily involved in making sure the contractor was building stuff meeting our specifications and the plan requirements. So, oh yeah, I worked with Troy quite a bit, so he's a good guy.
I've seen a lot of pictures on this job as he was going through. He was pretty proud of it.
Something to be proud of, I'll tell you. When you do that kind of work, wow, that's huge.
This is a project that Dave should be really proud about. He's been on it since, like he said, 2015. So
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you go back and the day-to-day function, it's just beyond what myself, I don't know, others probably can even imagine what takes place, because it all has to be coordinated with everything else. And oh my God, it's just, and you're dealing with piers into the water, and there's got to be a depth in those to hold those up there. They have to go down a long ways into the ground, right?
They do. Yeah, bedrock, some of them are on piles, but they're all founded on bedrock, either poured directly on the bedrock, or they have steel piles, I think 40 plus piles. So steel beams that are pounded into the ground to support it. But everything's on bedrock, which is makes for a really stable foundation.
Wow, unbelievable.
I would think your first thing would have to be getting over your fear of heights.
Yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't
I
do
was
well
telling-
there.
No, I
Right.
wouldn't either. I wouldn't. My knees would be knocked in. I'd be locked right up.
I get nervous going to the second story of my house.
right.
So yeah, they also had to deliver the girders to the site once the piers were installed. The girders, they were all fabricated by JP Carrera out of Middlebury. So they kind of had to make a big loop from Middlebury all the way through Burlington and down the interstate
Wow.
down to 91.
How long are those?
This piece right here is 96 feet, but it's the heaviest. This was close to just under 200,000 pounds.
Gee,
And it's about 10 feet tall. So
boy.
yeah, Carrera said it's one of the heaviest pieces they can physically handle at their.
I can imagine. Imagine
Site.
the traffic that had to, from Middlebury there. That's quite a feat in itself.
Yeah,
And that's concrete?
that is
Yes.
concrete. Yep. And so there were 70 pieces varying from 96 feet to almost 150 feet.
Wow.
So here you can see this is all the pieces in place. So what they do, each beam, I guess, line is made up of 7 different individual beams, and then they'll place them all up there, and then they'll cast concrete in between them to kind of create one continuous beam. And then in the end, they will actually put some steel wire down them and tighten jacket and pull that whole beam together. So all 7 of those beams act as one individual beam. So the bridge itself, so it's 863 feet long, divided up in between those piers. And it took about 6 weeks to set all the beams for the Northbound Bridge. The Southbound Bridge took a little longer because they did a lot of that work in the winter, over the winter. So it ended up taking 10 weeks or so, but still precast is usually a pretty quick process. So, and this is the kind of final product before they started working on the Southbound Bridge. So they get the Northbound Bridge in place, deck poured, bridge rail on, and then they could switch all the traffic over to that bridge. And, I like this because it, you could see the depth of structure they needed back in the 60s to build this bridge. And now it's been reduced down to 10 feet. So I think it was about a 20 to 25 foot deep superstructure. So deck and then steel versus, 10, 11 feet deep now with kind of modern construction techniques. So it's nice how much innovation is always occurring in the field. So
Do you ever get into these projects and say, when you're taking down the old structure and say, man, that was done too soon? I mean, do you see some things that say, whoa, this is a good decision to do this now?
there's definitely that all the time. Our inspectors really can't see every little crack and piece, and inspecting 2 bridges like that, it's almost impossible to see every issue with it. And in demo, you see, you think you cut something that's stable and it kind of gives way, and you're like, oh, that's not a good thing. So
Thank God for a snooper truck.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yes.
It's funny that you say that. I don't want to indicate how old I am, but one of the first things that I did when I came to the Agency of Transportation, if you can see right here, there's a catwalk.
Oh, yeah.
So back in 1988, 89, we did a rehabilitation of these structures, and we installed that catwalk so the inspectors could actually get in there to inspect
See it.
these
Oh,
trusses.
I
So
that's interesting.
yeah, unfortunately,
Did
that was a
did
long time ago.
Did you walk underneath there yourself?
No,
Okay.
no. There's a few things that I've done that are really scary working for the agency, but then there's things that I refuse to do.
On a job this size, and I always hate to ask this question, was there any injuries or anything? Because there's so many man hours that are there. It's just,
I think there have been, but
Yeah.
nothing too
nothing that serious.
serious.
Okay, good. That always worries me, because you got hundreds of employees working on these projects.
I mean, look how high that bridge is. I
I
mean, look
know.
how small those trucks are, or whatever
I
they
know.
are down below.
I mean, there's no room for mistake. I mean, it's just wow. It's just
I mean, that one crane down there is fully extended, and it
I know.
doesn't even get to where it's supposed to be.
wow.
Yeah, the contractor had almost like a safety team on site because it was so significant. They would have daily
Well, that's what I'm saying.
safety check-ins, and
It's huge. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Southbound Bridge construction. And I like this picture. They actually started it soon in the fall. They were finishing up their construction of the piers. They've been the project's been a little bit slow at times, but they've been trying to really speed it all up. And you can see the underside of the Northbound Bridge. You can see those girders there. And here's another view I kind of like with the new bridge. And these are, so traffic on the Northbound Bridge, you have southbound traffic going on it and northbound traffic going on it. And these are, there's barrier in there with this on there to separate the traffic. And like Dave mentioned, we do a lot of this work. They did a lot of this work in the wintertime. So here on the Southbound Bridge, they're installing all those very deep concrete girders and lots of snow, typical of winter.
Oh.
And so they had all of the girders in place probably January, February of 2020. And of course, their goal was as soon as spring came, they were going to start forming up the deck. What happens? COVID. So it delayed their start a little bit. And so you can see that this looks like fall. So this is fall of 2020. And because this bridge is 860 feet long, the actual deck pours are done in sections. And it took them a long time. You form up that deck, that takes a long time. And then pouring the concrete for the deck takes a long time. And this actually, they're moving their screed machine. They've just finished up the deck pour, and they're moving that most likely to their next location. Whoops.
Do both bridges have to be exactly the same height, or they can be different? Or they're both the same?
Dave, I believe they're both the same
Yeah,
grade.
there's some varying grade just based on the roadway approaches, but
So it doesn't have to be exactly like the other one. It's made for that lane. Okay.
Yep.
Right. They could, and it could have been that both those bridges, the original bridges could have been like even 5 feet height differential.
I see.
We still
Okay.
would have tried to go with the same type of bridge
Right.
in both north and southbound.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to let Dave talk about this slide.
yeah,
Wow.
I like this one because it
Look at the
gets into
rebar.
that jacking that you have to do to these girders again. So there's this large jack that pulls these steel tendons. So they feed these 660-foot long tendons all the way through the girder end to end, and then they jack it to this, I think it's like 200,000 pound force that pulls that whole 800-foot girder together tight, and it just makes for a really strong beam. And I ran some numbers, and if you combine both bridges, they had to feed 93 miles of steel tendon through all these 6-inch diameter ducts. So it's
Get paid by the mile.
yeah.
Yeah, you can see that there's there's this duct and then there's another duct and another duct. So there's 3 ducts there. So it takes a lot of strands.
Wow.
I know Dave told me about the 93 miles this morning, and I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like traveling, to Canada from XYZ.
What's the state's portion of what's the state's portion of the 55 million? Is it most of this federal money?
It's 90% federal, 10% state.
Thank you.
So at this point, they are continuing to form up their bridge railing, which is a concrete bridge railing. This also has to be done in sections, so it takes a lot of time. It's a time-consuming effort, and they are almost complete at this point. And you can
Can I
see
ask
that
a question?
Sure. Jen.
You're using concrete. In the past, it was metal, I believe. So from a longevity perspective, I would assume that concrete is now being used because it has a longer lifespan, or are there other reasons for using this approach?
So all of our bridge railing now has to meet certain test levels based on the amount of traffic that goes on the bridge, maybe the height over the river. So in this particular instance, I think you're going to see more and more as we continue to replace our interstate bridges, especially, you're going to see more concrete type railing, because that is called the F shape, or that's a test level 5, I believe. And it's been designed to withstand the impact of trucks, cars at certain angles, and it's more durable than the steel bridge railing that was in place here, 50 years ago. We have on the interstate replaced a lot of our bridge railing from what was originally installed when the interstate was first built, and to make sure that we have railing that's going to stop a car from coming over that railing into the river. So this is the strongest railing we have at that test level 5. And like I said, as you drive the interstates, 91 and 89, you're going to see more and more of this in place. In Colchester, when they did the bridges there 2 summers ago, I believe, was the Colchester project, 2019. Those have the concrete railing as well. So you will see more of that. That's a really good question, Senator Kitchell, because because also if you go to other states on the interstate, you'll see a lot more concrete railing too than when we were back in the 70s driving around.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So I like this picture too. It kind of shows, there's your concrete railing. But you can see the southbound cars coming over on that crossover onto the Northbound Bridge. And you can see, actually, this picture, it might be a little bit deceiving, but it does look like this, just because of the angle, it looks like the bridge is lower than this bridge, right? See the railing and the railing, but it's just the perspective. And one of the things that's also going on right now is they're cleaning up. This is their access roads that they built so that they could get to that trestle bridge. So there's a contractor there right now. It's Bays and Brothers, which is and they're cleaning up this whole site so that eventually, when they leave in September, this will be somewhat back to the way it was prior to construction beginning. And here's another picture. It's getting there.
Unbelievable.
Good.
Wow.
And this is a awesome picture. So what's
Wow.
really exciting about this picture is that this is a depiction of what it's going to look like when everything's said and done. But what's really exciting is that this project won the 2021 Precast Pre-Stressed Concrete Institute Award for transportation best bridge with a main span more than 150 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, anytime, I always find it exciting when
Yes.
Vermont being such a small state, and a lot of our bridges are not as magnificent as the ones that you might see in Florida, Minnesota. And when we win an award, I think it's just, it's awesome.
They should
And
put your picture, yours and David's picture on there, you know?
the which picture?
Both of your
Oh, Dave-
pictures. Yeah.
So I just wanted to show you, I don't know if you guys have the PDF, but there's a link.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's
That
beautiful.
will go to the actual article. Carrera is the one that put this project in for an award. And I just find that, like, there was some facts, like, and this also has,
Wasn't there
What?
an award also for the bridge in Brattleboro? It
yes, there
seems like,
was.
that was, I remember we got, I think, a YouTube or something, I can't remember, some article that sort of outlined that project, and which it's hard to remember everything, but I thought was also a Vermont project that received an award.
I'm just gonna throw this out, and Dave's probably like, I know what she's gonna say. He's smiling already, but I know Senator Mazza knows this project, but the Richmond Checker House Bridge, the Big Truss Bridge at Richmond, where we widened it, where that work had never been done anywhere in the country, that project's won 7 awards nationally.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we do nice work. Our agency's got some good folks. God.
Yeah, well, I just mentioned that one because I was the project manager on that project. So
That's good. You should be proud. You should be proud. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a lot of work that goes into those, a lot of coordination, and it's just look at that. That's just beautiful. You know?
yeah, I'm very excited about this. So we'll get rid of that. And basically, that's our presentation. I don't know if you have any other further questions. Dave and I would be happy to answer them.
Well, I thank you both folks for a great presentation, and I thank you for the work you put into this project, because it certainly is. I like to have that picture in my committee room. That's a nice one. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can email it to you.
Okay.
Better email it to Liz.
Yeah, email it to Liz, right?
Okay.
Any other questions this morning on this project or the other projects? I want to thank you folks for a great presentation and all the hard work that went into it. We're real proud of it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And
Thank
you
you.
all have a great day. It's
Okay, you
Friday.
too. Thanks.
Bye. Let's see.
Okay, committee, anything, the committee, any other issue this morning, or you got some time to do some catching up this morning?
We're on the floor at 11.